All right, well, I'm just going to get started chatting. I've got our Voices for Wellness screen up there right now. And thank you all so much for joining us here today. This is our first adventure, and I'm going to just switch right on over here to my friend Tim. And there we go. I think we're up live now. Fantastic. All right, so Tim and I have been friends for several years, and so as I said earlier this evening, I had almost an explosion of my brain one night where I just said, gosh, we have got to be talking about wellness. Who's talking about wellness? And then I think it was like 11:30 at night, I started dinging people literally like, we should do this thing. And I don't know what it's going to be, but we should brainstorm and we should talk about it. And I brought you in and said, what can we do to just have conversations about wellness? And Tim and I have been friends we actually took college algebra together about 15 years ago, I think. And
I think it's more like 20 years.
Has it been 20 years ago? My goodness.
Yeah.
I grew old fast. It happens. But that was a fun time to get to know each other and spend some time getting to know each other. And then, I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity now to get together and talk about what wellness really means to us and the idea of whole health and holistic health. And so really tell us about yourself. Tell us, what your qualifications are, that kind of thing. Just tell us a little bit about what you got into here.
Okay. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, which means I have a graduate degree in counseling and education, my bachelor's in sociology. I had to sit for a state board test and then do 3,000 hours of internship, which is about 2 more years before I got fully licensed. I worked in the beginning, what I like to call the trenches. Some experiences I had, like working for the Juvenile Justice Center and working for a community agency. It's now MHID. Those were the best experiences. That's when I really learned what counseling was all about, and learned not only in helping other people, but also helping myself along the way. I also like to tell people the difference between like counselor and psychologist and psychiatrist. So imagine a totem pole, and I'm on the bottom of the totem pole, and above me is probably a PhD LPC, and they're the college professors, and then above the PhD LPCs are psychologists, and they go to school for many years. They're the people that I refer to for complex cases, schizophrenia and those types of disorders. I also refer to psychologists for testing. And of course, above psychologist is the psychiatrist, and they're the medical doctor. They're the ones who could prescribe the medication. Everybody wants to know who can prescribe the medicine, and those are the MDs. Those are the psychiatrists.
Right. I've seen one of all of them at least.
Right on.
Yeah, no. So how did wellness become a top priority in your life, and when did a shift happen?
So for me, the big shift came probably the summer of 2001, the beginning of 2001. That's when I had my first major depression, the first of 3 major depressions. And it was a big shift for me because at the time I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what was happening to me. I was feeling really, really bad. It felt like I was shutting down. It was like being in the movie theater and the lights are starting to dim. I mean, everything was starting to fade. And I didn't know, what it was. And of course, when you don't know what something is, you start to make up all kinds of things. Like, I mean, I thought I was dying. So that really affected the way that I felt, and of course affected my depression. So finally, I talked to people, I talked to some counselors, so I figured out what it was. I went to see a doctor, and I was prescribed some medicine. And the medicine didn't really work for me because I was already feeling really bad. Depression, it feels like the flu, and it feels like the flu in your brain. And the medicine that I was prescribed, one of the side effects was headache, or they said you would get a headache until you adjusted to it. And I was going, weeks with this headache, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped taking the medicine, and I knew I had to do something different. So that's when I figured, or I remembered that, when I used to run, because I was a runner at one time, I felt really good. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, what if I could start running again? But of course, when you're depressed, you don't just get out and start running. I mean, I just had to get out of the house and just, walk down the street, and then maybe walk around the block, and then maybe walk around a couple times, and then maybe, eventually, pick up the pace, start to jog. And then one day I was running, and of course, that, exercise, that absolutely is what helped me get out of that first depression. And not only that, I would imagine that my depression or whatever I was depressed about was on the ground in front of me, and I ran over it. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to help. So I came up with different things. I read a lot of self-help books. I read books about depression. I'm a pretty spiritual person. I have my faith, and I like to find out about other belief systems. So that also helped. And that's how one day I kind of put it all together, that I had this treatment plan of every day do something for my mind and my body and my spirit. And that came in handy the second time I got depressed, because all of those things that I was doing to help me feel better, well, once I felt better, I stopped doing those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then eventually what happened was I went back to being depressed. And the thing about depression is it's like it picks up where it left off, and then it gets worse. So my first depression was about 9 months. And then my second depression was about a year. And once again, I remembered all of these things that I did, and I did these things again, and it took some time. And eventually I felt better. But once again, after I felt better, I stopped doing those things.
Yeah. And
eventually, third depression. And that was the big attention getter, because that was that was the worst one. And I realized during the third depression, okay, I had these things that I could do to feel better, but I had to keep doing these things once I felt better to prevent it from coming back. So my recovery plan became my maintenance plan, which eventually became my prevention plan. So I haven't been depressed. Last one was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, my situation is that it always tends to manifest in physical illness. And so from a very young age, I was dealing with different types of panic and anxiety that manifested in physical illness. But then I also, like you, discovered at a young age that my body was very reactive to medicine. I couldn't take, there was all different types of things. Yeah, I was in a pretty bad accident when I was 14, and I learned a lot about medicine at a very young age. And my body reacted. My body reacted to migraine medicine. My body reacted to birth control. My body reacted to any kinds of chemicals they would give me in the hospital when that major accident happened. I just reacted very violently to things. And so with a physical manifestation that came with anxiety, but then you can't take medicine for it, what are you going to do to solve that problem? And so at a young age, I faced things physically that other people hadn't really had to experience, and had to figure out how to solve those problems. And so I can see a lot of that. And I can tell you that for me, I mean, just even this very last depression I just dealt with was, you know, about a little less than a year ago, or probably about a year ago. It came in the form of my body reacted with some thyroid stuff. And I probably dealt with a virus as well, but it was just such, I mean, it just drew me right back down into it. And so I can completely understand how, you know, folks like us can talk and communicate about what we did to solve those problems for ourselves, because I live without medicine right now, and I live most of my life without depression. And so but I am realistic about the idea that I might get deep in the couch again someday, some days. And for me, what I've learned at this point in my coping mechanisms is that getting deep in the couch is not horrible. Like, it's okay to get deep in the couch. It's not okay to think about hurting myself, but it's okay to get deep in the couch and watch a lot of TV and just zone out. And so I've taught myself that.
I had a professor that he used to say, if you're going to be depressed, be depressed. Mm-hmm. Be the best depressed you can be, but put a time limit on it.
Yeah.
And then do something different.
Yeah, do something different. You know, when I talk about the flow and the alignment, I always also look at, okay, well, I had a physical manifestation, an illness that caused a physical manifestation that caused depression, which basically what that is for me is it's my life saying, hey man, something's got to shift. We got to move somewhere. We got to do something different. And every time I do, I roll into the next phase of like fabulousness.
Right. It's just a signal. Just pay attention to the signals. It's kind of like your dashboard lights up and tells you, you know, you need to check the engine. You know, you need to do something. So, and if you don't know how to check your own engine, take it to professional.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So here's a point where I want you to tell me, what are the 3 tips and tricks you would give someone today to benefit their wellness?
Okay. So what I had to do in realizing, or what I decided to do, because I knew that I could use my own experience to help other people. That's kind of that was a big help in my 3rd depression. Was I felt like I was going through this depression because it was just going to help me help other people, because I knew what it was like. So everything that I was doing, and up until then it was a mind, body, spirit thing. But in that 3rd depression is when I learned this cognitive triangle here, and I also learned this great little thing called mindfulness. So I wanted to be able to like capture it and put it all together so that I could, you know, present it to people and show people, you know, these are the things that you can do every day. Because, you know, a lot of times, you know, my experience when I was depressed, I didn't feel like there was anything I could do. But then I discovered there's lots of things that I can do, and it becomes like a checklist. So, and I'm not asking people to do things more than what they're doing. It's a lot of it is just doing things different, just kind of shifting. So the 3 parts, well, let me start with, we're one whole person made of 3 parts: our mind and our body and our spirit. So we have to do something for each of these 3 parts every day to be balanced, because a lot of times people are just in here and it can throw these other 2 off, or a lot of people are just in here and it throws off the others. So to be balanced, we do something every day for our mind, our body, and our spirit. So the 3 things that I talk to clients about every day, and this is the recipe for peace of mind. The first thing that you do every day for peace of mind is honest communication, right? That's the first rule in therapy, is we got to be honest, because if we're not honest, you know, nothing's going to change. And then the second is getting more information. I mean, you want to find out more of what you can do. So like a lot of what I did was, you know, I read books, anything I could get my hands on. Nowadays, you know, there's YouTube, you know, so many opportunities to find out more, you know, what you could do for your mental health. So, and what that is, that's all input, because, you know, whatever you input affects your outlook, and your outlook is what affects your output. So if you're just watching like bad news all day, you know, if that's all you're inputting, that's going to affect your outlook, which is absolutely going to have an effect on your output. So you really want to be careful what you're putting in here.
Do you remember that what I said a few minutes ago was about the fact that my body manifests my anxiety? And with my first pregnancy, I read all of the books that would tell me everything that could go wrong. And
Yeah,
everything that could go wrong went wrong with me.
sure,
And I had a
sure.
preterm baby and I had a lot of problems. With the second birth, I began to really understand that idea that my body manifests these things, my anxieties, they come true to me because for whatever reason I create that. And so I spent all of my time, because I'm a like you, I want to read everything. I'm researching everything about birth, right? So I shifted it all towards a positive birth, a peaceful birth. And then I had just like completely different experience. It was just so wonderful. And it's just amazing how that shift, turning off the bad news, turning on what could possibly happen that's beautiful, was so helpful to me. Yeah.
Right on, right on. And that's what we believe. That's a big part of this part, our spirit, because whatever we believe, well, that's why we think the way we do and feel the way that we do, and do what we do. Those beliefs that we have, they become like programs in our computer. So if we have limiting beliefs, those limiting beliefs can absolutely produce negative thoughts. Which will produce negative feelings, which will produce negative actions if we're not paying attention. So to help pay attention, there's this practice called mindfulness, mindful meditation. So the practice of mindfulness is just the paying attention to what's happening in the now, and usually what's happening in the now is we're thinking. So I want to practice just catching myself thinking. Because a lot of times, if I'm feeling angry or anxious, it's not something that's happening, right? There's nothing happening. It's something that I'm thinking about. So if I'm thinking about something in the past that didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, or I'm worried about something in the future, my body is going to respond to that as if it's happening. So I want to be able to tell my body, those are just thoughts. So I want to practice as often as I can, just catching myself thinking. So the three things that I want to do every day for peace of mind is communication, getting more information, and then of course the mindful meditation. Mm-hmm. And then the three things that I want to do for my body every day, and this will never change, is we have to pay attention to our nutrition,
yeah,
and our and exercise. And also sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hydration.
So every day want to make better choices when I'm eating and how I'm moving, and then how I'm sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Are you looking at something on there?
Yeah, I'm getting texts on here. I just want to make sure. It says it's not live yet. The Facebook isn't live yet.
Is it live?
Is it live?
Joe's on it.
Okay, cool.
It wasn't live at the very beginning, and
okay.
then it shifted over.
Okay, just getting some texts, and people are saying that it's not live yet. But then again, those might have been delayed texts, so
yeah,
sorry
I
about
think that's
that.
what it is.
Okay, okay. So then the last part of this is spirit, and so I just want to define spirit. Spirit is personal power. Back in pep rallies, we used to say, we've got spirit. Yes, we do. We've got spirit. How about you? That's your drive. That's your motivation. And there's three things that we can do every day to strengthen our spirit and to strengthen our power. And so if we're talking power, the way that we get power, well, just like, lights and lamps have power, is they're plugged into something. So spirit is all about connections, right? And the connections that we have with each other are our relationships. So the three relationships that I want to focus on every day is the relationship that I have with myself, the relationship that I have with other people, and then of course the relationship I have with my higher power. Whatever I believe, and the ways that I can practice those beliefs every day. So every day I want to pay attention to this relationship with myself, and that's, you know, there's your higher self and there's your lower self, and your higher self always knows the right thing to do. And if you do what your higher self is telling you to do, at the end of the day, you're going to be so glad that you did. But if you give in to your lower self, you know, your lower self doesn't feel like doing those things, you know, you're going to regret it. So every day I want to focus on those things that I know that I need to do. I want to pay attention to my higher self. And then also I want to spend time with people who are positive, people who are supportive, people who like to do the things that I like to do, that I enjoy doing things with, because that's empowering. And that, of course, includes all living creatures, even plants and animals. And then, of course, like I said, higher power, you know, whatever you believe, you know, practice that every day. And then, of course, paying attention to your beliefs, because your beliefs, once again, the programs that are in your computer are the reasons why you think and feel and do the things that you do. So these three parts of us create this cognitive triangle, the three energies that we express every day. And those are our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. And this is mental health right here. This is the definition of mental health. It's how you think and how you feel and what you do, and how each of those affects the other. So a lot of times, you know, when I'm working with people, they come to me with, you know, it's an anxiety, it's a depression, it's an anger issue. And a lot of times when you ask people, well, what's causing you to be anxious? What's causing you to be angry? Or what are you depressed about? A lot of times people think it's something out here.
On the outside.
You know,
yeah.
it's some situation, it's some other person, but nothing out here can make you feel something in here. So it's not exactly what's happening out here that's making you feel this way. It's what you think about it. So if you're feeling negatively about something, about a situation that you're in, then you're probably thinking negatively. And if you're thinking negatively, that's going to send a signal to your body through your central nervous system. It's going to result in an emotion. And then if you think negatively and feel negatively, well, what kind of actions is someone probably going to have?
Right.
Negative actions.
Yeah.
And we could have a list of all kinds of negative actions. But the one negative action that I like to point out to people is, you know, when you're depressed and anxious, what sounds like a good idea? What do people like to do when they're depressed or anxious?
What do
A
people
lot of times,
do? All kinds of things, yell and scream and blame and and type faster and
yeah. Well, a lot of times, you know, people will do like the negative behaviors, like they'll eat too much, they'll drink too much, they'll sleep too much, those kinds of things. But when you ask people, like, what do you do when you're depressed or anxious? When you ask most people what they do nothing. And doing nothing is a negative action.
Yeah.
Because if you think negatively of your situation and then you feel bad and then you don't do anything about it, well, then what are you going to think about that?
Right.
And then this is where we can start to give ourselves a hard time about the way that we feel.
Yeah.
And what I always ask clients, if you had a friend who wasn't feeling good, if you had a friend who was depressed and anxious, would you give that friend a hard time? And most people say no, of course they would not give a friend a hard time for feeling bad and not doing something. Well, if you wouldn't treat a friend that way, well, then maybe the opportunity, or a big opportunity, is to be better to yourself.
Absolutely.
Treat yourself better.
Absolutely. Treat ourselves better on a regular basis. And I was actually thinking about the emotions and the thoughts and creating action. And I was listening to something the other day that was talking about how that depression is really at the very lowest level. Depression and sorrow and sadness is at the very lowest level. The anger and stuff like that is higher. It's a higher rather than a lower. It's more active. And so anger is actually better than depression is. And so it was this interesting idea that there's more action, more positive action in anger than there is in doing nothing at all. I just thought it was an interesting concept to think about it, because it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna lean into that anger sometimes. I think that that's okay for me to do, you know?
Well, this is where I would tell somebody, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be stressed. That's all a part of life. But when it becomes anger, depression, anxiety, that can be too much. And usually it's too much because we're making something out to be worse than it really is. Mm-hmm. So we're not saying that people aren't supposed to experience these emotions at some level, but when they get to a level when it stops you from doing the things that you want to do, then that's maybe when it's time to intervene and do something different. And of course, again and again, if you don't know what to do, talk to professionals, someone that can help you figure that out. Another way it was framed for me, and this is in A Course in Miracles.
That's where it was from. It was from A Course in Miracles.
There's only two real emotions, right? There's love and there's fear.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So if I'm feeling angry or if I'm feeling anxious or depressed, then it's some form of fear, right? I'm either afraid that something isn't going to go the way that I want it to, or I'm afraid something isn't ever going to be good again, or I'm afraid that something isn't going to just go wrong. It's going to go like horribly wrong, the worst case ever wrong. And a lot of that is, we're just making it up. So at the end of the day, if I'm feeling, any of those negative emotions to those levels, I want to ask myself, what am I afraid of? And is it real? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of, we're confronted today with a lot of stuff that's happening in this world. But for most of us, well, I'm not going to say most of us, for those of us that are witnessing and watching it, and that's affecting us, we're somehow, starting to think that that's somehow, some way, we're a part of that. Like I'm afraid that is going to happen to me. I'm going to be in that situation, and it's not just going to be bad. It's going to be one of those worst cases bad. So I want to, once again, come back to my mindfulness and tell myself, whoa, that was just a thought. That's not happening to me. I want to remind myself that everything around me is okay. And that's, that's what I would do for a friend. I would tell a friend, are you sure? Is it as bad? No, I don't see anything happening to you right now. You look like everything is okay. Mm-hmm. So once again, treating myself better and being more honest with myself can help a whole lot.
This time period that we've been dealing with has definitely had me speaking to a lot of my friends and myself, for that matter, about right this moment, right now. Is everything okay? Right here, mm-hmm. right now.
Sure.
And
sure.
It is. It's okay.
Yeah.
There are fears. I have fears. I have anxiety.
Yeah.
I have but right now, right here, everything is okay.
All of this, it's all a part of life. Stress is a part of life. Getting mad about things is a part of life. But it's absolutely what we do about them and how we think about them. And I always want to make sure that I'm being realistic. So, there's positive thinking and there's negative thinking. And then there's this space in between that's just neutral, mm-hmm. Neutral thinking, which is realistic thinking, mm-hmm. Because a lot of times we're making something out to be, the worst thing ever. And we're not going to kid ourselves and say it's the best thing ever. It's not the worst thing that could happen. It's not the best thing that could happen. It's just something mm-hmm. that happened. I want to bring it down. And if I bring it down, then I'm going to be able to neutralize that feeling so that I can be just okay about it. Since I mentioned it, I'd like to talk about this rating scale that I use with clients and how to check in with them every day. So it's a simple rating scale. I like to keep it super simple. So it's a scale of from 1 to 10. 1 is the worst day ever. Mm-hmm. 10 is the best day ever. Mm-hmm. So if I ask somebody how they're doing, I mean, if you ask someone, a lot of times people say, oh, I'm about a 5 or a 6, and that's okay. Uh-huh. And okay is okay. So 5 and 6 is a good place to be, or it's an okay place to be, right? So if someone is at a 4, well, then they're less than okay. And if they're at a 3, they're worse than okay. And if they're at a 2 for more than a week, then they might need to see a doctor. And if they're at a 1, the worst day ever, then they might need to go to a hospital. Mm-hmm. And doctors in hospitals, you know, what they're primarily going to do, their job is to stabilize that person. So they're going to give them medicine to give them back up to maybe a 4, a 5 if they're lucky, so that they could do the things that they couldn't do otherwise. Mm-hmm. So when they're able to do things that are good for them, then they can get higher up on the scale. So if they're a 6, well, that's the higher end of okay. 7 is better than okay. An 8 is pretty good. 9 is awesome. And 10, best day ever. That's for special occasions. We're not going to be 10 all the time. It's not realistic. And people that try to be a 10 all the time can knock themselves down to the bottom of that scale. So, you know, anywhere between 5 and an 8 is somewhere where I want to be. And then, like, if I'm at a 4, if I am less than okay, then it's always, well, then what can I do to get to be okay? You know, what would it take to get to a 4, you know, from a 4 to a 5? And then when I'm at a 5, okay, then what would it take to get me to a 6? You know, I'm not going to go from the bottom to the top overnight. I'm going to work my way up. So it's just doing things and gradually moving up on the scale.
Yeah, I've also heard some stuff about whatever you go to sleep with, whatever, like wherever you are when you go to sleep, you tend to wake up in that exact same spot, and that you know, how do you get yourself from one day to the next day to a different, you know, space and time, which I haven't necessarily figured out, but I wake up and drink a glass of water and go stand outside in the grass and hope for the best.
Well, I heard one of the best things that you can do before you go to sleep, and this is kind of like, it's kind of like hypnosis, because, you know, hypnosis works when you're in that relaxed state, but when you're being hypnotized, the person hypnotizing you is getting you into a relaxed state, and then they're introducing some kind of thought. But what you can do in reverse before you go to sleep is, well, how do I want to think tomorrow? How do I want to feel tomorrow? What do I want to do tomorrow? So when you start to think that way, you're introducing that into your sleep, and then that will affect the way you sleep, and then probably will affect how you wake up. Waking up is where it all starts. So I like to use that. You know, we heard growing up, you know, there's the right side of the bed or the wrong side of the bed. Mm-hmm. So if you wake up on the right side of the bed, that's the grateful side, right? Because when you wake up grateful, how do you feel?
Yeah, you feel good. You feel
right.
Compelled to move forward through the day with excitement.
Right. Yeah. You feel good, and then there goes your day. Mm-hmm. But if you get up on the wrong side of the bed, that's the complaining side. And if you wake up complaining, how do you feel? Yeah. Yeah. And there goes your day. So you always have something to be grateful for. You always got something to complain about, but you get to decide which side of the bed you get up from in the morning.
You know, that very thought made me think too. One of the things I started doing with setting my intentions before I even got out of bed in the morning was that I live in a cool, comfortable house. My sheets feel good, and I am about to get some really good, delicious smelling coffee, and that's going to be joyous. And then that's when I take my first steps out of the bed. And that has absolutely made an impact on how my days start.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But you have to do that with intention. Mm-hmm. Because we as humans are hardwired to focus on what's wrong, mm-hmm. right? I mean, since we were hunting and gathering, you know, we were always focused on, you know, what's going to go wrong. I mean, you know, is something going to jump out at us, or, you know, what is that berry that I ate that almost killed me? So we're always like focused. I mean, we are hardwired to focus on what's wrong. So we kind of have to override that with what's right. Because it's just very rare. Or when was the last time you heard someone ask you, hey, what's right with you?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's usually we're focused on what's wrong. So you kind of have to do that little extra focusing on what's right. And of course, if you focus on what's right in here, then you're going to start this in a whole different kind of motion.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about what are the subtle signs of lack of wellness that are concerning you now?
Subtle signs of lack of wellness, which is just, people who don't do the things that they can do to feel better. What this model tells us is that everything affects our emotions. So for mental health, I'm always, asking all these questions, like, who are you communicating with? Who are you talking to? What are you finding out about? What are you learning that's new? Are you spending too much time in the past or the future? Could you be practicing some just being in the now? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you getting enough sleep? We should be getting, 8 hours, no less than 7, no more than 9. That's why they say 8, because it's the average. And you want to get that at the same time, every night, as close as possible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. If you plan to do it, it just means you're going to hit the target more than not. So these are things that people can do. Who are you, spending time with? And what are your beliefs? Really taking a look at, what do you believe? And it's not just about religion or politics. It's about money. It's about relationships. It's about so many different things. It's what you believe about the environment. And then whatever you believe, how can you practice that every day? So there's so many opportunities that I see that people aren't taking to feel better. Right. So I'm always paying attention to all of these things, because if someone keeps coming back to me and saying that they're not feeling good, they're still feeling depressed and anxious, but you're not doing anything different, especially in here, because it's visible. You could see a lot of times when people aren't taking care of themselves, they look tired. They probably could lose some weight. If you're not taking care of this, it is going to affect the rest of this and this. Mm-hmm. So if I ask people to try to do something different, and if you can't do it on your own, there's always, support. We can always identify people that can support you to help you to do these things different. So when I see people, when I have people come to me and they say they want to feel better, but then they're not doing these things that they can, or they'll tell you, people will say, oh, I did that and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. But this is a lifetime of work. This is a lifetime job. So, and our body, this is the only vehicle we're only going to get this one. We can't trade it in. Well, not yet anyway. So we got to take care of it, right? So right. If taking care of this is absolutely going to affect the rest of this.
And I like to say also, just because today didn't work out the way, tomorrow, you always have a chance to start over. Yep. Every moment, yep. Every breath, every day, every month, every year, yep. Start over again, start over again, start over again. And don't beat yep. yourself up for it. Because right. We're all dealing with it. We're right. all having to start over every single day.
Right. You ask people, are you your own best friend, your own worst enemy? Who do you want to go through the rest of your life with? And I always like to tell people, if something isn't working out the way that you want it to, it probably means that it's just going to work out some other way.
Yeah.
But if you stay stuck on the way that it didn't work out, you're not going to get anywhere. Being open to something happening, but that takes kind of a shift in this.
I think we kind of got through one of the next questions, but another question I have is, have you seen a shift toward wellness around you or in your particular job related to the pandemic time? Talking specifically about the pandemic time.
Well, of course, people are definitely feeling more anxiety with all of the news that's happening today. And of course, there's just not a lot of good news. Even before the pandemic, it was, you kind of had to search for good news. I mean, there was never like a good news station. Well, maybe a couple here and there, but you know, there's good news just isn't popular. Just, you know, there's just so much bad news out there. So how this bad news is affecting people, of course, you know, what we do, cognitive distortions, you know, humans, we think, you know, it's going to be permanent. It's going to get a whole lot worse. And somehow it's going to be the end of me. And then as an exclusive, or as a bonus, I should say, we make it exclusive. Like it's not happening to anyone else as bad as it's happening to me.
Right.
So I have to be mindful that, you know, that I'm okay. I see things that are happening on the news, and there are people that are working to make things better, hopefully. And I have to remind myself that it's these are just thoughts. But a lot of people that I work with, you know, it's kind of going 50-50. Some of my clients or people that I've seen, they've got this. Like they realize, like, when it's actually a real deal, like something is happening, they're okay. They realized, you know, when they were making stuff up, they weren't okay. But now that it's real, they're okay. They can do something about it. And then, of course, there's the other half that, you know, they are thinking, you know, and it's, you know, hard not to if you watch the news, that things are going to get a whole lot worse. So it's just kind of reminding those people that potentially anything can get better, and always focusing on what you can do. Right. You know, you can't really control what's happening out here, but you can control what's going on in here. And if you focus on controlling what's going on in here, you're going to feel better. And you could actually cause something to change on the outside of you. So we all could probably be making some better decisions and doing this a little bit differently, or a whole lot differently.
Yeah, I'm certainly a crisis is an opportunity type of person. And,
sure.
And I've listened to Brene Brown talk about the overdoers and the underdoers, and I tend to be an overdoer. So yeah. I'm going to get it all done. I'm going to solve all the problems. It's going to happen right now. And that's I guess she calls it over-functioning and under-functioning, you know? And so I think that I see a little bit of that in the wellness sphere, where it's like, okay, well, maybe we are over-functioning a little bit. Maybe we need to take a step back and breathe, you know, and just be in our own space too.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And, you know, something that you can do to help other people is just, you know, listen to what other people are going through. Take a break from what's going on here and get into someone else's, what they're going through. You know, just be there for them. And just being there, I mean, that the whole opportunity of just being, you know, it's not doing something, it's not doing nothing, it's just being, you know, being for, you know, if you're there for someone else or someone is there for you, that's very healing. So a whole lot of this, a big opportunity is just kind of being there for yourself. You know, I'm feeling anxious right now, you know, or I'm feeling depressed, and can I just be with this and not do anything, just kind of allow it. And a lot of times, if you allow emotions like anxiety and anger, they will pass. Mm-hmm. You know, thoughts pass, emotions pass if you let them. But a lot of times, you know, we hold on to them, we resist them, we make something, you know, worse than it really is, and it doesn't pass. So the ability to be mindful and just be with the way that you're feeling can be very transformative, but it takes practice.
Yeah, I think one of the equal reasons to nutrition and to, you know, exercise and stuff that I focus on in the garden is that I found that the garden was my place for therapy. It was where I could just be. And, you know, that was a good place for me. And that doesn't work for everyone, but it's my place, and it might be other people's places. And so I share that and teach people so that they have the ability to understand how to make it that space for themselves as well. And for, you know, for other people, it may be running, or, you know, or just working out at the gym, or whatever, you know, playing with your children, or whatever it is for you, finding the place where you can just be present and breathe, basically.
Sure. Yeah. And whenever you recognize those things that are good for you. Like when I recognized the things that I did, and I knew that somehow I had to put that in my back pocket, and I knew, one day that this would go in my back pocket, and it does, because it's on the back of all my business cards. It's knowing those things that are good for you so that you can have them to do. Like if I'm feeling bad, stress, the limbic system, most of the digestive systems, they stop working. So I don't want to have to think, okay, what was that thing that I did? I want to know, here's this list of things that I can do that are mindful, that I enjoy, that are good for me. So I don't have to think about it when I'm not feeling good, because that can be challenging. I wanted to include, because I was going to, I mentioned it on the event page, a simple formula for happiness using this triangle, this triquetra right here. So happiness is an emotion, right? It's a positive emotion. So what does it take to be happy? Well, it takes the other two sides of this triangle. So if I want to feel happy, positive, well, then I need to think positive, and I need to do things that are positive. And things that are positive are just those things that you enjoy doing. Because if you're doing something that you don't like to do, are you going to be happy?
No, absolutely
no.
Not. Right.
But when you do things that you like to do, are you happy?
Yeah.
So you want to do those things as much as possible. So the formula to happiness is definitely positive thoughts and positive actions.
Yeah,
it just
absolutely.
takes work, practice.
Yeah, and it does take practice. I mean, I always talk about, when I'm talking about diet and how diet shifted for me, I tell people, listen, I've been doing this for 30 years, or I've been doing, I guess I'm not that old yet, but I've been doing it for a solid 20 years. And I'm on a spectrum, and you're not in the same place that I am. So just take one step today, and that's okay for you, you know? And I think that all of this conversation is a lot of the same thing. Just do what you can do today, and be proud of yourself for whatever it was you did today. All you did today was get up off the couch and take a shower, and then go back to the couch. Then hallelujah, you did something. You did something.
Give yourself credit versus being your own worst critic, because we're so often critical of ourselves. But if we take the time to give ourselves credit, but if that's something that we don't normally do, we don't normally give ourselves credit, then that becomes a practice.
Yeah.
And definitely an opportunity to feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. So there weren't any questions, but there were a couple of comments, and I just thought I'd throw out there that, was this Rochelle or Rachel, by the way? Can you hear me? Rochelle says, our friend Rochelle, I find it so important making time for others in my life. I plan and I get nurtured by my circle. So she's got a circle of friends around her. Yeah.
So she knows that circle that she can connect with. Yeah. I love that she said circle. Yeah. So you know who your circle of friends with. You know who you can depend on.
It's funny, the word circle and circle and circle. And I think in circles when it comes to the garden, and that's so different than traditional row gardening. But I always think so circularly, and I try to create circular things. I think that's so interesting, because I never thought about that before, that there's definitely a rhythm to the circle, Yeah, it's beautiful.
Life is a circle.
Yeah. And then Tom says, those emotions do change brain chemistry and therefore body chemistry. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, people say chemicals, that the chemicals is when you ask someone what's causing their anxiety, depression, they'll say it's a chemical imbalance, but there's something causing that imbalance. It could be toxic food, it can be toxic people, it can be toxic thoughts. There's a cause for everything, but I never like to say it's going to be one thing. It's probably a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
So rather than try and figure out that one thing that caused me to feel this way, I'm going to focus on all of these things that I can do to feel better.
Yeah. I think that the hologram, the whole, and then teaching people the word holistic isn't some like woo-woo witchy thing. Holistic literally means the whole,
Sure.
And I think that expressing that holistic wellness, holistic medicine is the whole. And I think that that's something that's really valuable to talk about wellness at this point. Yeah.
Sure. And you want to focus on the parts that make us whole.
We lost your screen, by the way.
Yeah, that's probably because my battery is running out. But you know what? I can plug in. So let me do that.
Okay. And then when you come back, tell us that one last thing that you didn't get to say that you want to make sure everyone hears. And then I'll just throw out there that James, who's watching, also said that the circle symbol is a symbol for wholeness. It's just, you know, what we were talking about as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And then, you know, I want to just remind everyone, because we're going to jump off here in just a few minutes, but I want to remind everyone that we have a second episode of this coming up with Kayla Butts that'll be very focused on health and nutrition and food and cooking and all that delicious stuff. You know, I'm going to get big time into that. And okay, so tell us that one thing that you didn't get to say that you just have to say before you get off here today.
The one thing that I didn't get to say.
The one you can say.
Oh, the one that I can say? Well, I mean, I'm just going to say pay attention.
Yes.
I mean, it's just so important to pay attention because, I mean, what happens when we don't pay attention when we're driving? You know, that's when accidents happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's every day, you know, just pay attention, you know, to how I'm thinking, you know, what I'm eating, who I'm spending time with. There's just so many things to pay attention to, not judge them, just observe them, just kind of notice, you know, what is it that I'm doing and potentially what could I do different? Because there are so many things to pay attention to do different. So I don't want to get overwhelmed by too much, but just, you know, what's one thing I could pay attention to and, you know, and how I'm communicating or, you know, what information I'm getting. So this keeps going out.
Uh-oh. All right.
So yeah, just pay attention.
And I completely agree. I've actually been teaching my 16-year-old how to drive, and I told her one of the most important things that I do when I drive is I'm very aware because someone else may not be aware. And if I'm aware, then I see a problem coming. And so, you know, that's the thing, is just aware. But I like that you said, don't absorb it. Just don't judge it. Don't absorb it. Just be aware of it. And I think that that's extremely important as well, because I think when we immediately, our monkey mind starts going into that space where we start trying to solve the problem and judge it and decide why it's that way, rather than there's a thing, I see it, I can certainly be prepared for the idea that those things happen around me and make moves in that way. So I want to make sure everyone knows, like I said again, that episode 2 will be on August the 3rd with Kayla Butts. And we will also have that one. We're actually going to go live on that one at 3:30 because that's the best time for her. But we will have it available just like we will have this one available. The entire thing will be recorded or is recorded. It will be up on Facebook. You'll hear this on Facebook again. You can see it on my page on the Aislynn Campbell. And then you'll also be able to get it in a YouTube recording on my YouTube channel as well. And so you'll be able to see this again. Yeah. Hey, there you are. Good to see you again, Tim.
Sometimes say goodbye, and thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for offering yourself up as the first guinea pig as we figure all this stuff out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you all so much to our audience for tuning in with us and bearing with us as we learn how to use these new technologies. And I'm really, really excited about the new technologies that are available. I think that you know, finding the good in everything, it tends to be how I am. And so I'm looking at this space that we're in and the opportunity to learn technology and to use it and to go even more global with some of the ideas that we've been talking about here recently. Oh, here's one real quick before we tune out. This is a great question. Any advice for parents regarding their children right now?
Yeah, so great question. So often people want to, you know, find out who they should send their children to talk to is therapist wise. And I would tell any parent, you go see a therapist.
The parent
if you think your child needs therapy, you could probably use therapy too, because you can find out the things that you can do to help yourself, to help your child through whatever that situation is.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really good.
And just, and once again, it's just, and what's happening right now, the question is probably like, just addressing what's real. Like being able to have that discussion with your child and talk to them about what's really happening, that might be happening on TV, but it's not happening to you right now. But if it does happen, we have a plan. There's always something to do. Just reassuring children that there's just always something to do.
Yeah, problems we can solve. All right, Tim, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you, and I appreciate
you.
And sharing your stories, because I think that's what this is all about. And I hope that maybe as I get through a few more of these and get a few more people up, then we can come back to it and we can reassess again and do another interview with you, in the future.
I'd love to.
Let's
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm going to sign us out here in just a second.
Ready.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.